People who will hear what I say and they go, well, I had all these digestive problems and I tried an all-meat diet and I felt better. Listen, I am talking about making recommendations on a population level. I am not saying that there aren't individuals who subjectively feel better on very strange diets.
Can you hear him? Rude.
Why does he have to say very strange? He has no magnanimous molecules in his body, absolutely devoid of any empathy. He's so belittling to people that have reversed these chronic diseases.
Would it be quite strange for an omnivorous predator like us, hypercarnivores specifically, to eat a herbivore diet? Now, that would be a strange diet, wouldn't it? But he chose the herbivore diet.
A carnivore diet or a plant-based diet. I would pick the plant-based diet.
Humans are not herbivores.
So that's not strange, despite the effort that we have to go to get complete proteins.
Vegan proteins.
The supplements aren't strange. Vessels shipping you all of this produce from all different parts of the globe, farming this stuff so that it's available all year round so you can do your plant-based diet. That's pretty strange, I think.
I agree.
Some people go on a carnivore diet and say they feel better. So a carnivore diet is kind of an elimination diet. And for people with a lot of gastrointestinal disorders, elimination diets can subjectively make them feel better.
Take out the trash.
What I would say is you can probably do an elimination diet and still add back in specific fiber types and probably still feel just fine.
Stop it. Get some help.
Do you know what? Just give up, mate, on the fibre. All right? You're full of rhetoric. You know, it's subjectively feel better. You feel better.
Why would you put something in the body that doesn't break down and will cause inflammation?
Speak for yourself, human. Gubba gubba.
All of these bezels, these very intense kind of blockages that people get, that hospitalize people, consist of plant material, specifically cellulose. It doesn't consist of ruminant meat.
The study bombing. He just puts study after study. He doesn't think people can read them. And when they do read them, they realise that he's vacuous, actually.
So Layne Norton has been at it again with his citation bombing and misleading information.
It's very funny when you look at what he's saying, what he's actually doing. So he starts off with the fear around fructose is absurd. So that immediately sort of tries to get you emotional. It immediately shows his bias. It increases liver fat, suggesting ridicule for people that are saying something about fructose. And then he labels us as the low carb ilk.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
So that's a us and them statement. In the tweet, he says it increases liver fat by 70%. So that is, firstly, a relative risk. We'll look at the fact that the saturated fat group, which incidentally, a large proportion of the saturated fat was coconut oil.
Come on now, dog.
Which I tell you what, is not in a carnivore diet. That went up 55%. Now, the carb group, which is simple sugars, which includes fructose, but it was 200 grams of candy, 4.3 deciliters of sugar-sweetened beverage, and 2.8 deciliters of orange juice.
Come on, man.
Which is a mix, isn't it, of fructose, glucose, and sucrose. That goes up 33%, and the unsaturated goes up 15%.
It's amazing how that still increased fat the way it did, even though there was candy and, glucose, sucrose, for example, in there rather than just fructose. So it shows you how potent it really is.
Yeah, exactly.
Got him.
This study is actually proving that fructose is a problem because it did increase 33%. And how it increased is not talked about. Fructose, and they put this in the study, stimulated de novo lipogenesis, which is the creation of new fat, a 10-fold increase compared to saturated fat.
We got you.
Huge. So we're making new fat from the fructose. The processing within the liver is self-evident with fructose. It's much, much higher. So when you look at the absolute changes in the study, the saturated fat group saw a 2.7% increase in fat, and the fructose group saw a 1.4% increase. So this 70% is just fear-mongering, like I say.
It never happened. This one was invented by a writer.
Also, is what's interesting is the baseline of the saturated fat group was already higher, by the way.
It is very, very misleading. He has failed to mention key details that would actually give you a full, broad picture of reality and not just what he wants you to take from it. It'd have been great, wouldn't it, if he'd just done grass-fed beef or lamb fat and then honey and fruit juice. That would be a better study, and it would be actually quite interesting to see where those figures lie then after that.
Vader, I've never felt so good. What was that back there?
Grass-fed beef. Did you like it?
Yes.
Good.
As we know from carnivore, or keto, the way we eat, we see our fat stores reducing because there's a lot more throughput. We're breaking down fat on a more regular basis. It's going back through the liver. It's been shipped out. So what you also see from fructose is, although hepatic or intrahepatic triglycerides are not as great, the blood lipids is much larger in the fructose group. And that's completely missed in the tweet. You can't draw the conclusion from the tweet that saturated fat is worse than fructose. Right, but what we can get from it is how bad fructose actually is. It's a great study. So I'm going to thank Layne for that, because if people want to know how bad fructose is, I might actually use some of this study. There is one study where it is a much better thing, where it's looking at fructose and fat as individual things in the study. And what we saw was that the saturated fat reduced fat in the blood by 22%. So I'm doing a Layne Norton now, and I'm picking one little thing from that study. Don't you want to know what everything else in that study says?
I was going to say, one of these days he's going to use fibre as the saturated fat source. Because, of course, we generate short-chain fatty acids out of fibre, and he wouldn't surprise me. And Stephen.
Why did he drop the mic? He hasn't done anything convincing.